The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 189. The Wolverines make history by toppling 3 top 10 teams in 1 week, 2 of them on the road. That and more on this week's show. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. On this week's Michigan Gameday segment, our guest is Wolverine basketball beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. We'll get Mark's thoughts on the battle with Michigan State and what lies ahead for Michigan in this brutal but exhilarating Big Ten season. On Wolverine News and Notes this week, National Signing Day is 1 week from today. The class of 2014 has 16 verbals so far, and who knows what will happen in the next 7 days. Last week at this time, we were hot on the trail of Minnesota commit Jeff Jones and Florida running back Marlon Mack. The word is now that Michigan has informed both players they are headed in different directions. What does this mean? We'll have to wait until next Wednesday to find out. Malik McDowell, one of the 4 or 5 star, depending on the rating services, that is still considering Michigan, on Monday released, according to the Detroit Free Press and MLive, his final 4 schools. Ohio State, Florida, Michigan, and Michigan State are among them. He was visiting Michigan State last weekend. This weekend pays a trip to Columbus, and then, of course, will make his decision next week. At the end of last week, Coach Hoke announced that 3 players have been given their release from the program. Running back Thomas Rawls is headed to Central Michigan, while Richard Ashe and Josh Furman have yet to find a school. That opens up 3 scholarships, which will probably be utilized for the class of 2015. Dave Brandon has said that he wants 1 night game a year at the Big House. Next year's schedule might not have that sizzle opponent he would like, but it appears Penn State might be his choice for next fall's Under the Lights game. There has been no formal announcement yet, but in last week's Detroit News, Michigan beat writer Angelique Schengelis said Brandon has mentioned that Penn State would be the most attractive opponent on this year's home slate. So we'll stay tuned for news on that. When Trey Burke and Tim Hardaway left for the NBA, we weren't surprised. We were thankful that Mitch McGary and Glenn Robinson III had decided to stay, and that this year's team would again be very competitive. Mitch is gone for the season, and Glenn Robinson III has been good, but not spectacular yet. It doesn't seem to matter, though. The mastermind is still here, and I think that week after week, game after game, we are gaining an appreciation for just what an outstanding head coach we have in John Beilein. This past week was one for the memory and the record books. 3 victories over top 10 teams, and 2 of those on the road. Wolverine beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press joins us next with his always interesting and blunt perspective on Michigan basketball. Right here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Back with us on Michigan Game Day, Michigan basketball beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. Mark, great to have you back with us.
Glad to be with you.
Well, a big week for Michigan basketball, and let's start, Mark, with that 80-75 win at the Breslin on Saturday. Even though the Spartans were shorthanded, a win at the Breslin, any way you can get it, was very impressive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that this is what they have to do. You have to win big games, you have to beat good teams, and to win on the road is remarkable. I mean, I think that what they did last week was really one of the great feats in recent Michigan basketball history. They haven't been this consistent. They definitely haven't been this elite on the road, and they went there and they did it just as they did at Wisconsin the week before.
Well, Michigan State, that's all you have to say, but you had ESPN Game Day there all day at the Breslin. Then, of course, the crowd was so jacked up for that game. Mark, you've seen some great venues covering Michigan basketball, like Duke and then down in Bloomington. How does the atmosphere at the Breslin stack up against some of those other places?
When Michigan State's playing well, it's great. Last year, it was the wildest game I've ever seen in terms of a crowd, personally. And, Assembly Hall's right up there, too, and everything. But, when the opposing team is winning, like Michigan was the other day, the atmosphere loses a lot. I mean, before the game, it was at a fever pitch, but, I think that Michigan was in the game. It wasn't like last year's blowout. So, the crowd was a little diminished because of that.
Well, after the game, Tom Izzo said, if there is a better two-way player than Gary Harris in the Big Ten, God bless him. That was quite the battle with he and Stauskas, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that he really limited Stauskas. So the fact that Nick got 19 points, when Harris was draped all over him the whole game, really says a lot about him.
Well, and there were a lot of things to like about that game, too. And I think that matchup, even though Nick was hounded by Harris all night, he came up big in the clutch. But one of the things I really liked is he never seemed to force it, didn't get real frustrated, kept working to get open. His understanding of the game and his maturity has really evolved over one season, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's an evolutionary process. And, when you're waiting and you're watching two NBA players on your team take the ball, well, then that's the way it is. I mean, this is part of, they say that college basketball is about the young players now. Well, the returning players have established themselves, and the coaches, especially some coaches like John Beeline, have faith in players who he trusts. So until you can gain his trust and you have that opportunity, it's an you have to kind of work your way into that mode.
Well, another thing to like about Saturday night was Derek Walton Jr. He played his best game of the season. His game is starting to improve each time out, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the nature of freshmen, and especially a freshman point guard with Beeline. There's a lot to learn, there's a lot to handle, and it takes some time to figure all that out. And I think that that's something that he's getting more used to, in terms of being aggressive, especially. Late in the games, he wanted to hold the ball instead of passing it off and let someone else get fouled, and then he converted. And I think that boosts his confidence, and he's probably someone who needed confidence. He says he's got that mentality, but he needed to have a little bit more than someone, to get that faith, I guess, in a big situation.
Well, those free throws down the stretch sure have to help his confidence, don't they?
Yeah, I think so, and that's something he said. Well, I always hit free throws, and we said, well, we haven't necessarily done it in this environment the same way. So, to actually do it and prove that he can do it is worth something.
Well, it's been a long time, Mark, since we've seen a Michigan team go into the Breslin, get down in the second half, and then come back for the win. This team seems to be mentally tough, and they played like they expected to win for a change at the Breslin. Again, we haven't seen that for a long time on a trip there, have we?
No, we haven't. And, 2 years ago, in 2011, Michigan won, and they shot well. And that was a lot of Zach Novak's 6 3-pointers, and I think that was a big game, the one that broke through. But I think this team is more experienced. They've been in those big venues, and that one was against the number 25 Michigan State team. This is the number 3 Michigan State team is expected to be, to hold their home court. And Michigan went in there and took care of business, and I think that that's something that is a sign of Michigan to come.
And another thing also to like was the fact that State wanted to take Stauskas away from the offense as much as possible. And yeah, he had 19 points, hit the big clutch 3 at the end. But other players had to step up, and we saw Karis LeVert, Derek Walton Jr. on Saturday night. That is really a good sign for this team with a lot of big games left, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the way this team has to win. I mean, Stauskas is talented, but in college basketball, no matter who you have, you're never going to win with just one player. We even saw it with Trey Burke last year. There were times when Trey couldn't carry them by himself, and they needed Hardaway, and they needed Mitch Meary, and they needed some other people to help them out. And that's kind of the circumstance with any team. So Stauskas is talented, but, no one can do it by themselves. So having LeVert, having some other people, Glenn Robinson in spurts, Walton, that balance is necessary for this team to make waves. And they're learning that. I think they're understanding. Stauskas is understanding that too. He can't do it all by himself.
Well, in 1 week, Mark, 3 wins over top 10 teams. It doesn't happen that often in college basketball. It was really a week to remember for Michigan basketball fans, wasn't it?
Yeah, not that often. Not that often is even. I mean, it said 1986-87 is the stat that ESPN had, that Iowa team. It's been that long until Michigan matched what Iowa did, being 3 top 10 teams in consecutive games. So that's really a statement about their mentality. And to do it 2 of them on the road in hostile venues is even more of a statement.
Well, Coach Beeline, Mark, pretty intense guy, but usually very controlled on the sidelines. Was that the first time you've seen him there in the second half get that upset?
Well, not ever. I mean, I've seen I've seen every game for the last since he's been here basically, and he's had moments, but these are rare. They're very rare because he tries to stay composed. But I think that what that showed is that Beeline cares about this game. I know he tries to downplay it, say it's just another game. It's just he doesn't care about the rivalry, but I think that showed he does. And he thought that Michigan State was getting too many calls and things were that they were ignoring Michigan. I think that the Spike Albrecht timeout situation, where he had it clearly called and they didn't give it to him, I think that really upset him and kind of led to that a little bit. And then when Stauskas was fouled on the arm and they called, I think, a jump ball or something, these are the kind of things that they add up, and Beeline is not going to hammer the refs from the beginning. But when it becomes a pattern, it becomes this, and the game is on the line really at that point, he thinks they at least deserve a fair shake. They don't necessarily need an advantage, but they need a fair shake.
Well, a lot of good teams in the Big Ten already, Mark, saddled with 2 or 3 losses, and there are 11 regular season games left now. It's almost unthinkable Michigan can maintain this pace, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I mean, we'll see if they even get through this week. I know Purdue's not great, but that's on Thursday at home. It's a late game at 9 p.m., and Michigan's going into a couple stretches here that are going to really be intense because they have, they play Thursday, and then they have basically in the span of like 11 days, they have, I think, 4 games, something like that, maybe 12 days. So that's going to be tough, and then, you got another stretch there with Iowa, at Ohio State back-to-back, and then Wisconsin, Michigan State. I mean, there are stretches that are going to be tough here, and they're not going to go undefeated. But what they are is they have the lead right now. They're up by 1 on Michigan State. They're up by 2 more on everyone else, and that gives them a cushion. And that's really the way you got to be. I mean, they're almost at the turn here, and all you can do is win the games that are in front of you, right?
Well, that's it. And it's a season of tests. It's just been amazing so far. The next real test for this team might be how they respond after losing a game because they're riding so high right now. And if you don't bring it every night, we've seen it since the season started. That happens easily, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think that these are something that, and they're a young team, so the odds that that'll happen, they're not necessarily great. This could happen. It could take some time for the Wolverines to kind of get their footing and be an elite team because they have to learn how to deal with now the expectations. For a week now, they've been the underdog and they've been the one who has to prove something. Well, now they're the favorite and everyone's gunning at them. So that's a different mentality too that you have to adapt to.
Well, we're almost at the midway point after this week of the Big Ten schedule, Mark, and as we've mentioned, several very good teams have 2 or 3 losses already. Right now, how many losses or how many wins do you think it will take to win the Big Ten championship this year?
Well, I'll stick with what I said from the beginning. I think that 13-3, if someone's 13-3, I think they'll win it outright. I think at 12-4, you can get into a tie situation. And I think that's maybe, I know that's a long way for Michigan fans to look at it when they don't have any losses and 7-0, but I think that's how this is going to be. You're going to have down times, you're going to have tough travel, or someone's get hurt, or injuries, or whatever the case. These are kids. They don't play. They're not playing at an NBA level necessarily where they can run off these winning streaks because it's not necessarily. They don't have the mentality. They don't have necessarily the developed bodies. They're still going to class. Late nights, etc. They don't get to take naps the way other NBA players do. So there's a lot of different elements here. So what Michigan needs to do is get the ones they can. When I talk about controlling the controllables, well, some of that is you got to beat the teams that are lower on your schedule. You got to beat the Purdue. Winning in Indiana might be tough, but they should be able to do that and then handle Nebraska, and then get into that 4-game stretch, split that stretch, and then you're in a good position going into the end.
A big week coming up and a big month of February, going to be a lot of fun. Our guest here on the show today has been Michigan basketball beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. As always, Mark, it's a pleasure having you on the show, and we'll get you back on another couple of weeks.
Glad to be with you.
It was a very busy week on the Michigan athletic scene, so coming up next on Wolverine Quick Hits, we'll take a look at that as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue, Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits this week, Sophomore guard Nick Stauskas has been named the Big Ten's Player of the Week for the second straight week, while freshman Derek Walton Jr. was named Big Ten Freshman of the Week, as announced on Monday by the Big Ten Conference Office. For the week, Stauskas averaged 22.5 points, 3.5 boards, 4.5 assists, and 1 steal per game. He shot a blistering 57.7% from the field, 15 for 26, and 60% from long range, 9 for 15. He added a 6 for 7 showing at the free throw line. After playing in just 3 minutes against Iowa due to illness, Walton Jr. guided U of M to an 80-75 victory at number 3 MSU with a career-best 19 points, 6 boards, and 4 assists. He finished the game shooting 50% from the field, 4 for 8, and a perfect 2 for 2 from behind the arc, including a key long-range bucket to help U of M tie the game at 58 apiece down the stretch. He added a career-best 9 for 10 shooting performance from the free throw line, including going 8 for 9 over the final 2:29 of the game to seal U of M's second win over a number 3 ranked team on the road in less than a week. The Maize and Blue will be back in action tomorrow night, Thursday, to take on Purdue at the Chrysler Center. The game is scheduled to tip at 9 p.m. and will be televised on ESPN. And then it's back on the road Sunday for a 2 p.m. contest down in Bloomington at Assembly Hall. The University of Michigan women's basketball team used a plus 13 rebounding margin and a 15-3 run in the final 750 for a 60-44 win over Wisconsin on Sunday afternoon at the Kohl Center. Michigan kept alive 2 impressive streaks, as the Wolverines are 6-0 in both true and road games and contests following a loss on the season. Freshman guard Sierra Thompson was 5 of 9 from the field and a perfect 3 of 3 from three-point range to lead Michigan with 13 points. Junior guard Shannon Smith had 12 points, while sophomore guard Madison Ristovsky pulled down a career-high 11 rebounds to go along with her 6 points and 5 assists. Junior guard Nicole Elmblad had 9 points and 5 boards, and senior forward Val Driscoll and junior forward Saish Shigori combined for 15 points and 10 boards in the post. The Wolverines continue their 2-game road swing tonight at Nebraska. Game time is scheduled for 7 p.m., and then the ladies will be back at home to entertain Minnesota, 2 p.m. tip-off this Saturday at Chrysler Center. Michigan now 14-6 overall, 5-2 in the Big Ten. In hockey news, JT Compher had 2 goals and 2 assists, and Derek DeBlois scored twice to lead the 14th-ranked University of Michigan hockey team to a 5-2 road win over Michigan State at Munn Ice Arena. The win is Michigan's first at Munn since March 13th of 2010, snapping U of M's 4-game winless streak on Michigan State's home ice. The Wolverines scored 3 third-period goals to put the Spartans away after the teams entered the third period tied at 2 apiece. The Wolverines now 12-6-2 overall on the season, 4-2-0 in the Big Ten, and will entertain Wisconsin this weekend at Yost Ice Arena. The defending Big Ten champion University of Michigan softball team will enter the season ranked number 5 in the nation, as announced Tuesday by the National Fast Pitch Coaches Association in its preseason poll. The Wolverines received 1 first-place vote and garnered 652 points in all for the inaugural poll of the 2014 campaign. It is the highest preseason ranking for the Maize and Blue since 2010, when the NFCA pegged U of M at number 4. Michigan trails only 2013 Women's College World Series participants, number 1 Tennessee, number 2 Oklahoma, number 3 Washington, and number 4 Florida in the poll. The Wolverines are the highest-rated Big Ten team, joined by number 9 Nebraska in the top 10. U of M opens the season with a pair of games against ranked opponents on Saturday, February 8th in Tampa, Florida. The season opener features number 4 Florida, with number 25 USF capping off the doubleheader. In all, Michigan has games scheduled against 9 ranked opponents. The Wolverines will travel to Lafayette, Louisiana, for the first time to play a pair against number 13 Louisiana Lafayette during the Ragin' Cajun Invitational, February 14th through the 16th. The 2013 Wolverines won the Big Ten title for the 6th consecutive year and earned a spot in the Women's College World Series for the 10th time in program history. Thanks again to my guest today, Wolverine beat writer Mark Snyder from the Detroit Free Press. Always a pleasure to have Mark on the show. A reminder that if you get the show from iTunes, please take a minute to give us a rating. Our show app is now available for purchase from the iTunes Store, for Android devices from Amazon.com, and from the Windows App Store. If you're looking for a free app that carries the show, check out StitcherRadio.com or TuneInRadio.com, two great apps. It's a busy time of year for Wolverine followers, as we all know, so to keep up with everything that's happening on the Michigan athletic scene, become a member here at GBM Wolverine. Visit us at www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for free membership. You'll get email updates when a new story is published or there's breaking news, and you'll have access to our message board, which is very active right now with basketball and recruiting talk. So check us out today and become a member at www.gbmwolverine.com. As we all know, next Wednesday is National Signing Day, and next week's program will be published before the commitment faxes roll into Schembechler Hall. So as has been the case the last couple of years, we will let the dust settle, and then in the following weeks we'll get a couple of our Michigan football recruiting gurus on the show and discuss each of our 2014 commitments in detail. It's a big week, though. Tomorrow night, Coach John Beilein and the boys entertain Purdue at Chrysler Center. It's a late 9 p.m. tip for ESPN. On Saturday, it's a trip to Bloomington to take on a young and dangerous Indiana team. Hockey will try to stay on the winning track as Wisconsin pays a visit to Yost for a weekend series. And Coach Barnes-Arico and her surprising team will be on the road Thursday night, tomorrow night, against Nebraska, and then home for a Saturday afternoon tip against the Golden Gophers. Softball and baseball will join the conversation pretty soon. Coach Carol Hutchins and her team will open the 2014 season, as we mentioned, down in Florida 1 week from this Friday. Baseball will swing into action a week later down in the Sunshine State also. So as always, there is a lot to enjoy and look forward to for Wolverine watchers. That's going to take care of us for this week. Don't forget to tell your friends about the show and join us again next week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. Take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue.